Hi, everybody. So,
Hello.
Dana and I are here together. I'm so excited. We're going to talk about relationships. This has actually been a topic that I've been asked for a few times to cover.
Hmm.
People are like, really, like, what are relationships going to be like? Yeah. So, this should be really good. So, what do you want to talk about first?
Well, I think this episode, because relationships is such a big topic,
Mhm.
I think we would benefit from talking about boundaries and getting into what some of the boundaries in the 5D are going to look like, depending on
Mhm.
the type of relationship. So we have the romantic relationships, we have relationships with friends, family members, relationships with people that are unawake, and we are awake. So we're going to dip into a lot of those little things today. Yeah.
Yeah,
Hmm.
that'll be good.
Yeah.
So, boundaries are going to be hinged on respect.
Hmm.
And I think it's a good time to start that now. So for me, it's like sometimes I get a barrage of questions or like freakouts that are happening. And for me, it's like self respect first.
Hmm.
Can I handle dealing with all of that? Or do I have to let some things go unanswered right now and let them handle their own emotional freak out versus me trying to mellow everything. Yeah. So, and that applies to the unawake and the awake as well in the relationships that you're having. Are you respecting yourself in that relationship? And if you're not, then you need to create a boundary to do so, or else you're hurting yourself in the process.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I did a recent video about Trump derangement syndrome specifically, so that is on my Rumble channel. So I'm not going to go into all those details, but when it comes to the unawake versus the awake, a long time ago when I first woke up, I follow and still follow Lori Ladd, and she had some great advice. She's like, "Who are we to tell someone else that they're wrong?" Because we have our own beliefs, so we are right, but they have their own beliefs too, and they're right too. In their world, they are 100% right. So I had to really reel it back and not be so, overbearing, overwhelming with these folks. So because, I have kids, I read them stories. The tortoise and the hare came to mind. And I want to create a lot of parallels and an analogy for that kid's story, basically. So we're obviously the hare. We know exactly what's going on. We want to go forward. We want to press and get to the finish line very quickly. But our friends and families that have TDS or they're just unaware whether they, appreciate Mr. T or not, they're still the tortoise. So they have to go slow. And the reason they're the tortoise is because their subconscious mind has to catch up with us. And it's okay. So if we can get to the finish line in 5 minutes and they're going to take 50 minutes, what do we do? In the story, the hare goes to sleep. That's where, the analogy kind of differs. So we're not sleeping, we're actively clearing the Akashic records, we're clearing out our genetic line, we're meditating, we're focusing on, our own ascension, we're working on our humanitarian projects. So there's a bunch of things. And in the end, instead of beating the hare, the tortoise or the hare beating each other, we all walk through that finish line together. Where we go one, you guys know the rest.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that
Yeah.
was the analogy.
Well, which is a huge like analogy to what just happened on the 5th, because that was better for all of humanity and all the timelines that have been sandwiched together than it would have been. I mean, we maybe would have been really excited to see a more dramatic event than that.
Mhm.
But for all of humanity, it was much better what happened. And it will still roll out all the things that we've been waiting for.
Yeah.
but it might be slightly in a different order or whatever, and our attachment to everything definitely doesn't help.
Mhm.
Um, and also the attachment that you have to other people.
Yeah.
So, conditional love. If you do for me, then I will love you. And that's how we've been taught to behave.
Yeah.
And just loving people and letting them go. If they're not respecting your boundaries, that's going to be how we go forward in the future. And it's going to be really transparent. Like you're going to see if somebody has too many limiting beliefs to be able to have a good relationship with you. And whether it's a friendship or it's a divine partner, that maybe they have to grow a little more before it's time to come together.
Yeah.
Just being aware of that is important because we don't want to push it anymore. There's no need to push it, and it actually delays things. So just allowing things to come to you and not saying it has to be this way. I have to have the greenhouse with the white trim at the end of the block, and that's the house for me. When the universe wants to give you a castle on the hill and you're negating it by saying, no, no, this is what I want. This is how I feel safe. When something even better could be in your reality, you're blocking it by something that's not as great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree. That's huge. And yeah, letting people go their own pace because you've said this before, you could break their psyche if you don't. So it's important. And I've always thought about this whole process as a marathon, not a sprint. And that came into my like awareness basically when the decision was made by the Mr. T team to run for the presidency. Like, oh, this is a long game. We're playing the
Yeah.
long. Okay, so yeah, very
Well,
interesting.
and that's how everybody's played, except for us,
Mm,
is the long game. It's been the long game for thousands of years.
yeah.
It's just that we didn't know that because our lifespan and our attention span has been so shortened.
Mhm.
But that's changing because we're realizing that we're actually souls and consciousness in a body.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool. So I'm gonna pause real quick because I have to close my door. I'll be right back. So now we could go into the boundaries and what that really looks like. So we've already kind of talked about that from a friendship level, family member level, and now from a romantic relationship level.
Mhm.
Um, I think there's this book that I read. So as an empath, I needed a lot of boundaries. And one of the reasons why it took me so long to finally get into a good relationship is because I didn't have the boundaries. So I read this book, Why Men Marry, Bitch. They also have a book called Why Men Love, same one. The title is off-putting, don't get me wrong. So it's one of those books where I was like, oh, I don't want to read that because I'm not that, I'm not a bitch. But then I just succumb to all of those things. The idea of really looking at my boundaries. So one of the things in that book is that the first time you meet someone, you have a 90-day rule, and the candy store is closed for those 90 days, and you just get to know the person. And you really like there's no intimacy, there's no first base, there's nothing. You just get to know the person better. And I think we miss that. We miss that in our society because we read Vogue, we read Cosmopolitan, we read, those magazines when we're younger. I read them. There's even one called 17, I think, which was, and
Mhm.
they give you all these ideas of like what the female is supposed to be like. And I was following that. And then I was also an empath, so I didn't have the boundaries, and I was like, man, I need to fix this. So something that clicked in this book was that the 90-day rule basically for me. And also another rule that I saw in astrology was as above, so below, which is what well, how we wanted to start this conversation, but we'll do that with Elisa when she's available. But one of the topics of above that's so below is the planet Saturn. The planet Saturn is exalted in Libra. Now, and Libra rules relationships. So, from an astrological perspective, Saturn is the planet of discipline, rules, strict, stringent, this is where this goes, organization, all of those things. And then it's exalted in a relationship sign. What is that telling us? We need boundaries. And the boundaries are part of the basis of every relationship.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I feel like that's been on both sides with feminine and masculine.
Mm-hmm.
And the playboy versus the playgirl type thing. And also the hyper promiscuousness. I'm just going to say,
Mm-hmm.
say the sex word. So the hyper that word has really been created in the media, in the music industry, in Hollywood, and that's not in our best interest.
Yeah.
You know, if you look at people like Tesla, he channeled all that energy into his creations, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to be also not doing that as often, probably in the future, unless it's something that you really are focused on. I feel like you're going to get a lot of beauty and connection and all that stuff in other ways in the future. It's not going to be so focused on that because even healthcare people have come out and said, oh, well, you need to be doing this 3 times a week for you to be healthy. And what does that actually do? It actually depletes the man,
Mm-hmm.
which was probably the whole purpose of saying that, because they've been attacking the masculine body type for a really long time. And they're giving all this energy away every time they do that. And it's a big activity that's been going on. So I'm not saying it's bad at all,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm saying it's going to shift and it's going to be seen as something sacred.
Yeah.
It's not going to be seen as going to the gym as a necessity in the same way. And you're going to want to be with the person who is your divine partner. So your divine partner is a piece of your soul. And you probably created this a very long time ago, your divine partner, that split off and became slightly different so that you could have things to talk about. But you know them. They're a part of you. And you're going to know who they are and you're going to want to be with them because that is basically coming home to yourself. So that's the 5D relationship. And there are a few people that have that in their lives right now, but that's going to become more and more prevalent as we go. And working through your ideas about relationships and what they should look like, and this person needs to do this for me for it to be a good relationship, and I need this. Start doing the things that are really important for you, for yourself. And don't be looking at somebody that's outside of you to be creating happiness for you anymore. That's not 5D. That's 3D.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you look at a lot of the agendas on the planet, one of the agendas that the deletes had for us was to be a farm.
Mhm.
So why do we even have the notion or the idea or the agenda of abortion? It's because we have all of this revved up libido that is not really normal. From PORN videos to a bunch of like that whole industry, and it was just being fueled and funneled and massaged by all the other systems on the planet, and that's going
Mhm.
away. Yeah.
It is because it makes you look at the outside,
Hmm.
the package versus the consciousness that's inside of the package.
Yeah, that's right.
So, and that's also why really bad things have happened to young beings. And that's going to go away completely. But it's because the whole paradigm of what that was totally distorted within the people that were doing that.
Yeah,
So,
totally. Not to get too into that, but the SES magic that we hear about was to, siphon off the Kundalini energy with inside of us. And I heard somewhere a long time ago that the softer your skin is, it's a marker for having a really balanced Kundalini energy. I'm not sure how, I don't know what the correlation is to both of those, but think about it when you're,
hydration.
what's that?
Also, hydration.
That helps.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, like babies and 12 and unders, they have the softest skin ever. So maybe there's something there to that.
Mhm.
But that was definitely a focus. Yeah. And that's ending. Absolutely.
Yeah. That's over. And anything that creates a distortion within you that you're aware of, pay attention to how your own behavior is. When you look at yourself in the mirror, are you having positive self talk or negative self talk? Are you loving yourself? You want to behave as the partner that you want them to behave. You want to love you for who you are, even if you have a pimple on your forehead or, whatever blemishes you may have in your life going on. Be aware that you deserve love no matter what you look like. The package is not the focus, it's the consciousness. And that's where the big shift is going to come from is you're going to know that the consciousness is a part of you that's in another container, and that's why you're going to choose to be with them.
Mm, so beautiful.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And it starts with you, just like you said, that the mirror play, mirror work, or even just affirmations you can tell yourself. Some people are not ready for, waking up. As soon as you wake up, you go straight to the mirror and say, I really love you. It might be too big. So start small. I can learn to like you. I'm getting to the point where, I'm, really connecting with myself. Find affirmations and doing them in the mirror for me, it's work, but I've been doing it for so long. It's very easy.
Mhm.
Over time, it gets easier. But if you're not ready for that big, grandiose mirror work and mirror play, like Louise Hay likes to talk and call it, then make it easier. But yeah, just loving the skin you're in. That was huge. And that was what was in the way for myself. Every time I looked at the relationships I was in, the romantic ones, I was in the way. And I didn't see that until I kept doing the work, doing the inner work. And then I realized, ooh, I was the common denominator in all of those relationships. And that's one of the
Mhm.
reasons why they failed. And one of the reasons why I kept, you know, attracting the same person, basically.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, because you attract a similar person until you learn the lesson. So just like you wanted to bring up the narcissist and the empath
Mhm.
during this, they're basically a similar person. It's just the narcissist is so much worse off than the empath that they're manipulating to find any kind of safety, constantly manipulating everybody around them so that they can find safety in themselves. And the empath is the one that's getting manipulated because they're trying to give all this love with no boundaries to someone who is manipulating them. So it's like, and that's how empaths are born. A lot of them is with a narcissist nearby. So either a parent who's a narcissist, and then a lot of times, if they don't learn that, then they get into all these relationships that are narcissist relationships, and they're empathic, you know, and they're just seeing the imbalances, but they're not saying, "Oh, well, I'm allowing them to be that way. I'm just trying to mold them as well into something that I want." So the reflection is there. The kernel of narcissism is also there in the empath because we're trying to save them in order for them to become what we want them to be. So that's also slightly narcissistic.
Mhm.
So just being aware, like take a look in the mirror and think about what are the things that I'm doing that maybe are not working for me? What do I really want? And then become what you really want. That's the first key to relationships and good relationships, whether it's a friendship or a romantic relationship, because your divine partner, once you get together with them, that's them. Like you'll be in that relationship probably for the rest of this lifetime and the rest of all of your lifetimes. So you're not going to feel like, oh, I need this from them or else I won't feel good, or I need this, or you're going to realize that that person you're with them for the like duration. So why do you need all this stuff? You're going to learn how to provide it for yourself.
Mhm.
And you're going to enjoy them for who they are.
Right. Like not two halves becoming a whole, two wholes becoming a whole. Your cup was
Mm-hmm.
full before you met them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm. And that
It's
transition, oh, go ahead.
Well, that's 5D. That's how it works. Yeah.
And that transitions into the other point that we wanted to make about codependence. So
Mm-hmm.
that codependent relationship where you need that validation. And I see this in my kids. So the first son, I had to go back to school, back to work actually in 3 months. So I had 3 months maternity, which is going to change. I'm going to help that change because that's ridiculous. But it wasn't enough time, and that bonding aspect was lost with him. So he is much more needy. He has separation anxiety. He wants to cuddle for hours, which is adorable right now. I'll take all the cuddling I can get, but sometimes, I need to make dinner, life is happening. Then the second one, he was born in March 2020. And the next week after that, we were in lockdown. So I was home with him for 18 months. And he's completely different. He's not codependent. He's very independent. He'll come and give me a hug, but then after a while, he's like, okay, I gotta go. And he doesn't,
Yeah.
yeah, it's great. So looking at how you were raised, if whether you know or not, doing some journaling, figuring out how that looks, and letting go of those things because maybe there was a contract that you had to experience at the beginning, but that's over. You don't need that anymore. And nothing, you can give yourself everything that you think other people are supposed to give to you. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, when I was I was in college, then I moved out, went back to my parents to live there for a little while. And then when I moved out, I got my own place and I was in there for 9 years. And that I had to be there. I had to be alone. And after a while, I started getting used to being alone, and I actually liked being alone. I would go to the movies. One of the best date nights that I had with myself was going to KFC because, back then that's what I ate, and bringing a big bag to the movie theater and sitting by myself in the back, eating my KFC, watching my movie, and having fun, or going to the beach by myself, or whatever that looks like for you. But I learned to love that. And that's what helped me in my marriage now. I'm still self-sufficient. I'm coming with my cup full, not empty, looking for someone to fill the cup because you just keep looking and looking and looking for something that you can give to yourself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's what we're doing during ascension is we're healing those broken pieces within ourselves so that we are more and more whole, whether that's a shadow or a trauma or whatever it is, like a genetic line thing. As we heal those pieces of ourselves, we're becoming more and more complete, and it's going to be a more joyful relationship that way, whether it's a friendship or a romantic relationship. And marriage won't be seen as you do this and I do that. Like, that is not how it's going to work in the future. So start thinking about some of those things, some of the ideas that you have in your subconscious, and ask, is that serving me? Or is that something I need to figure out how to let go of?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
And from a timeline perspective, as the timelines were pancaked recently and now they're going back, we are experiencing a higher version of other people in our lives, or,
Mhm.
parents, significant others, children, however that looks. But in the lower timelines, are they experiencing a lower version of us, or how does that look from a relationship?
Yeah, in a lot of timelines, they're experiencing a version of us that we didn't stay with, that we didn't stick with. The consciousness is a different consciousness. So think of it as a kaleidoscope and everything's like refracted. Well, all the refractions came together for, and they're still pretty close right now. They're beginning to start to separate. So you could think of maybe there's like a little bit of slick lubrication between the timelines at this point. So it's not as easy to go from timeline to timeline as far as like if somebody's really raunchy and they're like trying to get into a higher timeline and just create a big stir and drama. It's not as easy for them to do that at this point, but they're not separate yet. And they will separate continuously probably for the next 6 months.
Okay.
Because there's going to be a whole lot of changes. And those changes are for a lot of timelines to see. So, and I think this is where kind of like the doppelganger comes in too. If you think about, like, there was this really interesting show where they brought all these people that were doppelgangers together. So there would be either like two of them, three of them, four of them, and they would all look almost identical. And they were very similar energies, but they were probably living a totally different life. So watching those multiverse shows and those things is important. It helps. But also realizing you just did a major timeline jump because all the psychics were agreed that we were going to have military before this selection thing that we went through on the 5th. And that didn't happen because actually it was better for humanity to do it this way. And it doesn't mean it's slowing anything down, but just knowing that timelines shift when it's important for them to shift, they shift. So that's why predictions are not necessarily going to work unless you're predicting something for this afternoon, you know. like there's too many shifts happening.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. Yeah. And how many of us listened to some of those predictions and inside there was a little tweak, a little tinge like, I don't know. I don't know. That doesn't feel right. That's another test, if you want to call it that, for the very awake and aware.
Mhm.
What do you think? Like go within and really focus on, how that feels from within. We all want to make sure we really understand how the subconscious mind works because I think that is the timeline that we're on. Just like how the tortoise and the hare have to get over that finish line together, we all have to go together. And if you look at the whole awakening as a chain, we're as strong as the weakest link. And I don't want to call anyone in our lives weak, but they're just not there yet. So they could, they could disconnect the chain. But how do they get stronger? By, getting soldered, by working on themselves. And that could take a long
Mhm.
time. And let it be okay. Let that time be okay. And
Yeah.
I'm so blessed that we have the time because with my humanitarian project, there's a lot of moving parts, and I really have to think about them and how I want to address them. And I'm so happy that I'm awake, but I'm also happy that I have this time before all of the good blessings come in and we get to actually start our projects with backing, financial backing, because
Mhm.
oof, it could be a little tricky because you're trying to deprogram the humanity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and as the timelines separate, the projects will get more and more solid in the different timelines. And, your project and my project, they're big projects, but they'll probably start small.
Mhm.
We're not going to have like 50,000 people applying to come and participate in this project in the first month. Like everything is gradual. And I think that as a group, we're so tired. We've been really sick of waiting. So we're like, do it, bring down the hammer. And it didn't work out that way. And then there's some people that have a much more negative outlook on some of the things that have been said have been much more negative in the channeling, which I talked about today in another show. And that's because they're on a different timeline or they're channeling someone that maybe is not appropriate to be channeling. And they haven't been creating boundaries in their own experience with the channel.
Mhm.
They're like, oh, who wants to talk to me today or whatever. And why would you do that? Why would you invite someone into your mind and your body if you don't know who it is? To me, that's like not good spiritual hygiene, you know?
Mhm.
So think about that when you're thinking about your relationships too. Like, have good boundaries for you, have good hygiene. It's the same as hygiene. Like, you are washing yourself with soap every day, hopefully, or every other day. Like, you're using something to make sure that your body is clean and that you're feeling good in your skin and you're not feeling crusty. So do the same thing for all the things in your body and in your reality, you know, wash your clothes once a week or twice a week, depending on how many times you really like. Don't let everything pile up and turn into a sticky mess.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so good.
Yep.
And while we have the time to really look at our boundaries, our relationships, we have the time to clear the Akashic records, all those things. One of the things that popped in is the daddy issues and the mommy issues when it comes to relationships. Um, uh, no matter what those look like, you could not have any. So a good practice would be maybe writing a letter. If you don't have any, just be grateful and have gratitude and write a letter to your mom or your dad, whether they're still here or not, of gratitude. If you have those issues, and some of them are really deep, and with abuse or whatever that looks like for you, write a letter of how you feel now and how you want to express that to them. If it's something you can share with them, great, share it. But if not, keep it to yourself. But get those feelings out, and putting them on paper is probably one of the best things you could do. But one of those, that's what I saw in my friends. We have a group of friends that are all different ages, and from like 20s to 40s, and the who got married the first, the girl that was in her 20s. She had an
Mm,
excellent relationship with her father. And when I looked at all of the other friends, our circle of lady friends, we all had these disjointed relationships with our fathers, and we all were creating similar relationships with that were not lasting. So that was something else that I pinpointed. And when you look at Saturn, Saturn could be also seen as father time. So that's
yeah.
why it's exalted in Libra, because there is, there's a lot of discipline that you have to look at and clear in that. Mhm.
Mhm. And ultimately, everything comes back to you.
Mhm.
And I think that's something that we've been taught not to look at and taught until it's like overflowing with stuff that we haven't dealt with. But the most important person to deal with is yourself before you do anything else. And to make sure you're healthy in all the areas, not just that your body's healthy, but everything about you is healthy before you totally dive in to everything. And I'm not saying if your divine partner shows up that you have to basically say, listen, I'm not healthy yet, stay over there. But you can say, listen, I'm working on this thing and that thing. And I'm so grateful that you're here. And let's take it slow. Let's take it slow. Let's not get attached to, oh, we've been together for 2 weeks. Let's move in together now. Take your time. Yeah.
That's right.
Those old paradigms are like,
Yeah, they don't make sense anymore. And when you look at some relationships that are long distance,
mhm,
they work. They work because they're being forced to take it slow. And that may happen to some of you that are listening to this because we're all spread out, right? So you don't really necessarily have your divine partner in the same town as you. You may meet them and they're going to be in a different country. And we're going to be able to travel quicker in the future. So that's going to help out. We eventually move in together, whatever that looks like. But yeah, take it slow, slow and steady.
yeah,
Mhm.
you may have 5 houses that you live in with them.
Yeah.
Like, who knows what it's going to look like in the future? One may be a hut and one may be an enormous fancy house. But you're like, let's go to the hut this week. you know, let's go camp out and be rustic this week.
Oh.
And also, I want to bring up the twin flame thing. Yeah. So the twin flame agreement that is ended, and now the twin flame is the divine partner because that was always a part of you. It was like a split, like a twin. And now it's a divine partner because the twin flame relationship was created for learning and it created a lot of polarity and hardship. So we're going into a loving, transparent universe where you're not going to learn through polarity and strife anymore. So that had to shift, and it's shifted from being twin flame into divine partner.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it feels so much better.
Yeah. Because, I mean, who wants to have a relationship that's hard all the time?
That's
Yeah.
true. It's too much. I agree. So I have this rubber band here, and I've used it before, like we're being stretched, but This, you could use a lot of different things to explain time, explain relationships, explain where we are with the Great Awakening. But some of us are here, and this is our normal, and this is the normal size of the um, my husband calls it an elastic. That's what they call it in Canada. But rubber
Oh
band,
yeah.
whatever you call it, it's cute. But some of us are feeling stretched. But no matter how far you stretch this, it's still a rubber band. So just
Mhm.
know that whether it's taking you a really long time, it feels like really stretched, or you're right here, you're on the right track. It doesn't matter where your partner is, where you are. Eventually, we're all going to get to the same place at the same time. So let it be okay. And ask for signs from the universe. So a long time ago, maybe 5 or 7 years ago, I wanted to get a lot of more signs to make sure I was on the right path, whatever that looks like. So I asked my guides, my angels, my higher self, like the whole lot, my ancestors, give me a sign of I was pretty specific, but it was rare. Give me a white feather outside. You could find it anywhere, but not in the, obviously, you're not going to find a feather in my house. Some people have, though. I think that's divine intervention. But every now and then, when I would walk outside, go earthing, do my thing, I would find a white feather. So I started collecting them, and I can't tell you how many white feathers I found. Oh, like it just didn't stop. So I stopped collecting them, obviously, but I have so many. Oh, so it'll come. And then this one I found at in a store. So still, it's a white feather, right?
Mhm.
So ask for a sign, whether it's a penny on the floor or something. Ask for it. It'll show up, but make it realistic. Like, oh, I want a dragon to come to my door and give me its tooth. No, make it realistic. But
Yeah. Yeah. If it's something that the human collective hasn't agreed to allow here yet, then it's going to be harder for that sign to show up. Especially, that's funny, I almost coughed and now you're coughing. So, especially like if it is a dragon in a real dragon body, if you ask to see a dragon and that's your sign, then you'll probably see a sticker or you'll see a cartoon figure or, a painting or whatever. And that can totally be your sign. But be realistic about where the collective is at the moment. I want to see a purple ET. That means yes. Maybe that's a little soon for that sign. Yeah.
Mhm. So that's true. And as
But
we wrap up this year, 2024, it was the year of the dragon. So we had a lot of dragon energy, and we're moving into the year of the snake. I don't know what element it is. I didn't look that up yet, but in Chinese astrology, it's the snake, and the snake's always been like, ooh, gross, a snake. It's going to be the higher octave, the knowledge, the
knowledge.
that Kundalini energy snake type of idea of the snake. Yeah, the knowledge of the snake. A lot of
Yeah.
knowledge. Hmm.
It'll be the knowledge and more awakening that's going to be happening. 2026 at this point, this is what I'm getting at this point, the end of 2026 is when the window closes for people to choose whether they're going to ascend in their body or not. So we've actually sped up because it was going to be at the end of 2027. So the awakening has sped up because of all the work that we've been willing to do. So now people are going to make that choice. And even if they're barely awake in 2026, but they choose internally that they're going to awaken and go forward in their body, then they will. It doesn't matter how much, like how far along they are. If they choose that, then they will just be in a slower timeline, but they'll still go through the awakening process in their body.
Hmm.
Mhm.
So good. And for us to remember to meet them where they're at. So if they are at a certain level, just meet them where they're at, hold their hand, be unconditionally loving. And if you can't be like that, go inside and say, am I doing that to myself? am I being unloving to myself? Because if you can't be
Mhm.
loving to, and I'm surrounded by TDS. Oh, it's too much sometimes, but it's okay
Mhm.
because I had it. So I know what it is to get out of that, and it's not easy. So we have to be gentle with everyone. And then the long-term
Yeah.
relationships, yeah, just the boundaries, they really help. Have that boundary where you don't talk about it unless you're invited to talk about it. And then know what
Mhm.
to talk about when you're ready to talk about those things.
Yeah, and having your own boundaries. So if you are surrounded by emotionally imbalanced people that seem emotionally imbalanced to you, then make sure you take time to be on your own and rebalance yourself. And if they are getting really out of hand, saying, sorry, I can't take any of that emotion today. I'm full. I love you. And I'm not talking about this anymore with you right now. So love yourself first and love everybody else. It makes it so much easier to love everybody else if you love yourself and you realize what your own boundaries are. And we're learning them right now. So ask yourself, am I over helping? Am I overdoing it? Is my boundary not firm enough? You know, and allowing them to have their own boundaries. Don't try and break through their boundaries. That's not fair either. Yeah.
Yeah, it does. That helps out a
Mhm.
lot. Yay.
This is really good.
Yeah, this was really good. We could probably we'll do the above so below with Elisa. Elisa, if you're watching, hi, we love you so much.
Yes.
Yeah, we miss you. But yeah,
I'll see
Elisa
you
has a
soon.
definitely. But when we talk about that, the way she explains the sun and Mother Gaia and that masculine feminine relationship, maybe a little, it's a little more of a romantic relationship conversation. But I thought of, when she talked about it in another video, and I just thought it was fantastic.
Yeah.
So a number two. Mhm.
Beautiful.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lots
Bye,
of
everybody.
bye.